James Gladstone came in and just really kind of shook things up. So take a look at some of the work that he's done so far. Ronald Darby, released. Devin Duvernay, released. Mitch Morse, retired. Those were three guys that were a part of last year's free agent haul for the Jaguars. He just basically hit the undo button on there. And then here are the two that really shook people up. Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. Christian Kirk was traded to Houston, and Evan Ingram, of course, released. The last two, those are the ones that kind of got a lot of Jaguars fans in their feelings. Now, don't get me wrong, Evan and Christian, both great to work with, but I don't know. What exactly kind of did y'all expect? Honestly, I thought y'all said you wanted a fresh start. Did you not know what comes with that? Look, honestly, you have to make some of those tough decisions, which includes moving on from guys that were a big part of what went right, but also a big part of what went wrong for the Jaguars. New coach, new GM, new era. That also means new players. You can't just hold on to the past. I mean, kind of that's like me standing right here saying, you know what I want? I want a brand new car, but I want to keep all the pieces from my old car. At that point, it's not a change. It just doesn't work that way. And if you wanted that, everything could have just stayed the same. Doug Peterson, Trent Baalke could all still be employed. Look, I get it, though. It's kind of a song that reminds me, right? It's tough to say goodbye. And that's the big thing, is that these guys were such a big part of what the Jaguars have done right. They scored points on offense, and that's what people love. A lot of jerseys out there in the stands. I don't know if it was up to me if I'd have pulled the trigger on moving on from both of them at the same time. But right now, you kind of just got to trust the process. It's a fresh start in leadership, which means a fresh start on the roster, and you kind of just got to let these guys cook and see how the pieces come together. Now, the Jaguars do have a ton of cap space, and free agency kicks off this week, so I would probably expect the Jaguars to be pretty active trying to fill some of those holes on their roster. Tomorrow is officially the beginning of that early tampering period, right? The teams can kind of start to negotiate those deals starting at noon, really talking to agents and players. And I expect the Jaguars are going to be one of the active teams. New coach, new general manager, new start. They got to bring in some of their own guys. Take a look. I kind of made a short wish list on this thing. This is my perfect world free agent wish list for the Jaguars. In top left, I've got Tevin Jenkins. He's an offensive lineman from Chicago. Dealt with some injuries, but when he's on the field, he plays at a high level. The Jaguars have two interior offensive line spots that they got to fill. He could fill one of them. On the right side at that top level, kind of standing like a superhero, Javon Holland. He's played like a superhero at times for the Miami Dolphins. He has been fantastic. Another guy, injuries have kind of played a role, but if you think back to that Jaguars game, week 1 of the season, that fumble from Travis Etienne, I know it's nightmare fuel. The guy that forced the fumble, yep, Javon Holland. Why not just bring him to the good guys, right? And on the bottom side, we've got a couple of defensive guys that I think would make a ton of sense. Poona Ford, he's a defensive tackle from, he spent last year with the Chargers. Maybe it would be an under-the-radar signing, but they played a lot of good football there in Los Angeles. And then the defensive back, got to add a cornerback at some point on this team, right? Paulson Adebo from New Orleans. He's coming off a pretty major injury, but he is a young, up-and-coming corner that I think would fit with what the Jaguars are trying to build here. Maybe another bit under-the-radar signing now. I'm kind of not done. That's just kind of the wish list on the top level. I wanted to talk about the receivers a little separate because this one is a little bit maybe more layered. I came into this thinking I was going to give you the pitch for DK Metcalf, but the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of beat us to the punch on that one, right? But these two guys are still available, and the Jaguars should land one of them. Both of these guys can bring one thing to the table when it comes to Liam Cohen. They can kind of help the installation of the offense, right? But right now, the acquisition process for each one of them is different. If you go for Cooper Kupp, they got to make a trade with the Rams unless the Rams ultimately decide to release him. We'll wait and see what happens there. While Chris Godwin, already a free agent. Now, both of these guys are getting up there in age. Both of them have dealt with injuries, but both of them still have a lot of good football left in them. I think both of these guys would definitely be an upgrade to the Jaguars wide receiver position from what we've seen over the past couple of years. You say you had Brian Thomas Jr., what you know you got with one of these veteran guys, and then maybe, just maybe, you add a decent rookie in the draft, and all of a sudden you start feeling pretty good about where the Jaguars are at. We'll have to wait and see how it all comes together. If I had my way, I'd probably go for a Cooper Kupp. It's just me, though.